If you have a $5 million portfolio, you have done something extraordinary. And for most people, $5 million sounds like the finish line. But here's the uncomfortable truth. A $5 million portfolio is not the same thing as a $5 million retirement plan. Because the real question is not, do I have $5 million? The real question is, how much of that money can I actually spend after inflation, taxes, Medicare premiums, market timing, and the way my accounts are structured? Let us make this very real. At a 4% withdrawal rate, a $5 million portfolio looks like $200,000 a year. That sounds very comfortable. But if that money is coming mostly from a traditional IRA or a 401k, then in a simplified 2026 federal-only example, that $200,000 withdrawal could become roughly $168,000 after federal income taxes and basic Medicare Part B premiums, before state taxes, Part D, Medigap, long-term care costs, home repairs, travel, family support, and anything unexpected. And if that income pushes you into Medicare IRMAA territory, the number can still be lower. That is the stark reality of a $5 million retirement in 2026. Not that $5 million is not enough. It absolutely can be enough, but only if the plan is coordinated. Today, I'm going to show you why $5 million on paper can feel very different from $5 million spendable and what you can do about it. Hi friends, welcome back. I'm Diane. For over 15 years, I have advised institutions, investors, and private equity firms on investment strategy. And now I help professionals and families pressure test their retirement readiness and build work optional plans with clarity and confidence. In this video, we're going to walk through 5 things. First, the $5 million purchasing power reality, why $5 million in 2026 does not feel like the same $5 million many people imagined 5 or 6 years ago. Second, the after-tax reality, how much of your portfolio may actually be yours versus the IRS over time. Third, the Medicare and IRMAA trap, the retirement costs that many high-income households underestimate. Fourth, sequence risks, why timing still matters even with a large portfolio. And finally, the Net-Efficiency Playbook, the 3 levers that can help you turn a portfolio into a coordinated retirement income strategy. And just a quick note, this video is for education. It is not personal, tax, investment, or legal advice. The right answer depends on your household, your assets, your income, your state, your goals, and your timeline. Let us start with the simple math. If you have a $5 million portfolio, here is what different withdrawal rates look like. 3% is $150,000 a year. 3.5% is $175,000 a year. 4% is $200,000 a year. 5% is $250,000 a year. On the surface, that sounds like a very strong retirement income range. And it is. But there are 2 problems. The first problem is that withdrawal rates are not guarantees. The second problem is that the dollars themselves have changed. Morningstar's current retirement income research for people entering retirement in 2026 estimates a 3.9 starting withdrawal rate for retirees seeking consistent inflation-adjusted spending over a 30-year retirement, assuming a 90% probability of success. They also note that retirees who can tolerate flexible spending may be able to start higher, but that is a different strategy than a fixed inflation-adjusted withdrawal every year. So if we apply that 3.9% number to the 5 million, that is roughly $195,000 in the first year for your portfolio withdrawals. That is close to the classic 4% rule, but the important part is not the exact decimal point. The important part is this: the withdrawal rate is only the starting line. It is not the spendable income number, because from there, we still have to adjust for taxes, healthcare premiums, account types, inflation, and whether you can adapt spending in bad markets. Now, let's talk about inflation. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the April 2024 CPI index was 256,000. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, April 2022 CPI was 256, and the April 2026 level was 333. That means prices, broadly measured, were about 30% higher over that period. So a household that thought $5 million is our number back in 2020 would need about $6.5 million in 2026 dollars to have roughly the same purchasing power. Said another way, a nominal $5 million portfolio in 2026 buys closer to $3.85 million of 2020 purchasing power. That does not mean $5 million is weak. It means that the number has to be interpreted in today's dollar, because retirement is not lived on a portfolio statement. It is lived through spending, groceries, travel, housing, healthcare, insurance, taxes, helping family, and replacing the roof, paying for care, supporting a lifestyle for 25 to 30 years. That is why the first planning mistake is assuming that a big balance automatically equals a big retirement. The better question is, what does this portfolio produce in real after-tax spending power in the years I actually need it? Now let us get into the part that many retirement plans gloss over. Not all 5 million portfolios are created equal. Imagine two couples. Both have 5 million. Couple A has a mix of taxable brokerage assets, Roth accounts, and some cash. Couple B has most of their 5 million inside a traditional IRA and pre-tax 401ks. Same headline net worth, very different retirement reality. Because if your money is in a Roth account, qualified withdrawals are generally tax-free. If your money is in a taxable brokerage account, part of your withdrawal may be basis, part may be capital gains, and you may have more control over when gains are realized. But if your money is in a traditional IRA or 401k, withdrawals are generally taxed as ordinary income. And once required minimum distributions begin, the IRS decides at least part of the withdrawal schedule for you. IRS guidance says RMDs generally begin at age 73 for traditional IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, and retirement plan accounts. And those withdrawals are included in taxable income except for basis or tax-free accounts. So if you have a 5 million IRA heavy portfolio, it may not be the 5 million of private spending power. A portion of that balance belongs to the future tax bill. Here's a simple way to think about it. If a 5 million pre-tax portfolio is eventually taxed at an average effective federal rate of 20%, the future federal tax drag is about $1 million. At 25%, it is about $1.25 million. At 30%, it is about $1.5 million. That does not mean you owe the entire amount today. It means that the portfolio is shared. You have a silent partner, and that silent partner is the IRS. Now, let us run a simplified 2026 example. Let's say a married couple withdraws from mostly pre-taxed portfolio. We'll ignore state income tax, net investment income tax, Social Security, Part D, Medicare, itemized deductions, and long-term care. This is not a full tax projection. This is just a stress test to show the magnitude. Using 2026 federal bracket and regular standard deductions, for tax year 2026, the IRS lists the regular standard deduction at $32,000 for married couples filing jointly. The 24% bracket begins once taxable income exceeds over $200,000 for married couples filing jointly. At a 3% withdrawal, that is $150,000 gross. Federal income tax is roughly $15,000, and after basic Medicare Part B premiums for couples, spendable income is about $129,000. At 3.5%, that is $175,000 gross. Federal income is roughly $21,000, and after basic Part B premiums, spendable income is about $149,000. At 4%, that is $200,000 gross. Federal income tax is roughly $26,000, and after basic B premiums, spendable income is about $168,000. At 5%, that is $250,000 gross. Federal income tax is roughly $37,000, and after basic Part B premiums, spendable income is about $200,000. Again, this is federal only and simplified, but it shows the point. The $200,000 lifestyle people imagine from a 4% withdrawal can start looking more like a high $160,000 before state taxes, supplemental healthcare costs, Part D premiums, home repairs, travel, and everything else. And that is before we even talk about IRMAA. And this is exactly why I do this work. Because for many people, the problem is not that they did not save enough. The problem is that they have built wealth across 401ks, IRAs, brokerage accounts, home equity, business income, Social Security, and maybe pensions or equity compensation. But no one has helped them turn those pieces into one coordinated retirement strategy. So if you're approaching retirement, already retired, or trying to become work optional, I help professionals and families pressure test their retirement plan, understand what is actually spendable, and build a tax-aware roadmap with clarity and confidence. I will leave a link below where you can learn more about working with me. Now let us talk about Medicare. A lot of affluent retirees do not think of Medicare premiums as a planning issue. They think, I'm eligible for Medicare, so healthcare gets easy. Sometimes it does, but Medicare is not free. And for higher income households, Medicare can become another tax-like cost. For 2026, the standard Medicare Part B premium is $202 per person per month, and the Part B deductible is $283. For a married couple, that base Part B premium is about $4,800 per year before Part D, Medigap, Medicare Advantage, dental, vision, hearing, and out-of-pocket costs. But if your income is high enough, you may pay more through IRMAA. IRMAA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. It is an extra charge added to Medicare Part D and Part D premiums for higher income beneficiaries. For 2026, the first IRMAA threshold is modified gross income above $109,000 for single filers or above $200,000 for married couples filing jointly. At the highest tier, Part B alone can rise to over $600 per person per month. And Medicare includes adjusted gross income plus certain tax-exempt interest income, which means that even municipal bonds interest can matter for IRMAA. Let us make this simple. Suppose a married couple has an annual gross income of around $300,000. That puts them in the IRMAA tier where each spouse pays over $400 per month on Part B. That is about $9,700 per year for the couple for Part B alone. At the base premium, the couple would pay $4,800, so the additional Part B cost is almost another $4,800 per year, and that does not include Part D IRMAA. Now, for a $5 million household, $4,000 or $5,000 may not break the plan. That is not the point. The point is that IRMAA is a signal. It tells you your income sources may not be coordinated. One Roth conversions, one large capital gain, one business sale, one big RMD year, or one poorly timed withdrawal can move you into a higher Medicare premium tier. And because IRMAA generally looks back 2 years, your Medicare premium in 2026 may be based on income from 2024. This is especially important around retirement. A household may have a very high income in the final working years, then a much lower income after retirement. So in some cases, if there has been a life-changing event like a work stoppage or work reduction, there may be a process to ask Social Security to reconsider IRMAA. But the larger planning point is this. Medicare premiums are not just a healthcare issue. They're an income planning issue. And if you have a $5 million retirement portfolio, especially one with large pre-tax accounts, you want to know where the tax brackets and IRMAA brackets are before you start creating taxable income. Now let us talk about market timing. Not market timing as in should I get in or out of the market. I mean retirement timing. Because the first 5 to 10 years of retirement can have an outsized effect on the entire plan. This is called sequence of returns risk. And the idea is simple. If you get bad market returns early in retirement while you are still also withdrawing money, the portfolio may have less capital left to participate in the recovery. Morningstar's research notes that retirees who face poor returns in the first 5 years of retirement and did not adjust spending were much more likely to run out of funds than those who experienced positive early returns. Vanguard makes a similar point. Sequence of returns risk is the risk of impairing lifetime spending power by withdrawing during a down market early in retirement. Let us use some simple numbers here. So let's say if you retire with $5 million, you plan to withdraw $200,000 a year. That's 4%. Now suppose the market falls 20% early in retirement. Your $5 million portfolio drops down to $4 million. If you still withdraw $200,000, your withdrawal rate is no longer 4%, it's now 5%. If the portfolio falls 30%, your $5 million becomes $3.5 million. A $2,000 withdrawal is now about 5.7%. That does not mean that the plan is doomed, but it does mean that the plan needs guardrails. Because the danger is not having a down year. Down years are normal. The danger is taking permanent withdrawals from a temporary depressed portfolio with no adjustment system. This is where many people misunderstand retirement planning. They think that the goal is to find one perfect withdrawal rate, follow it forever. But in real life, strong plans are usually dynamic. They have rules. For example, if markets are strong, maybe you allow for more discretionary spending. If markets are weak, maybe you pause inflation increases, withdraw travel for a year, or draw from a cash bucket instead of selling depressed assets. If tax brackets are favorable, maybe you do Roth conversions. If IRMAA thresholds are tight, maybe you manage capital gains more carefully. A $5 million retirement plan should not be fragile. But it can become fragile if the withdrawals, taxes, Medicare premiums, and market behaviors are all treated separately. So what do we do with all of this? This is where I want to bring it all together because the goal is not to scare anyone. The goal is to get more precise. A $5 million portfolio can be incredibly powerful, but you want that portfolio to work as a coordinated system. I call this the Net-Efficiency Playbook. It has 3 levers. The first lever is understanding where the $5 million actually lives. Is it in taxable brokerage, traditional IRA or 401k, Roth, cash, real estate, home equity? These are not interchangeable. A dollar in a Roth account is not the same as a dollar in a traditional IRA. A dollar of home equity is not the same as a dollar in a liquid brokerage account. A dollar of unrealized capital is not the same as a dollar of cash. So the first step is to map your balance sheet by tax treatment and liquidity. Here are 3 examples. Household A has $5 million without a large taxable brokerage account, a meaningful Roth balance, and only a small traditional IRA. This household may have a lot of flexibility. They may be able to fund spending from cash, basis, long-term gains, and Roth assets in a way that keeps taxable income relatively controlled. Household B has $5 million, but most of it is in traditional IRAs and 401ks. This household may look equally wealthy on paper, but future withdrawals are mostly ordinary income. At age 73, required minimum distributions to begin. If pre-tax accounts is, let's say, $4.6 million, the first RMD could roughly be over $174,000, depending on the exact factor in the account value. Household C has $5 million of net worth, but $800,000 is home equity. That means the investable portfolio may be closer to $4.2 million. At 4% withdrawal rate, that is not $200,000. That is about $168,000. That is not bad, but it is different. Because home equity is wealth, but it does not automatically pay for groceries, travel, healthcare, unless you sell, downsize, borrow, or otherwise monetize it. So the first lever is clarity. What part of your $5 million is liquid? What part is taxable? What part is tax-free? And what part is not easily spendable? The second lever is withdrawal sequencing. This is the question. Which account do we draw from, in which year, and why? Many people assume retirement withdrawals are simple. You retire, then you start pulling money from whichever account is easiest. But for a $5 million household, that can be expensive. A better withdrawal sequence may consider when to use taxable brokerage assets, when to realize capital gains, when to draw from cash, when to convert traditional IRA to Roth, and when to preserve Roth assets, when to take Social Security, when do RMDs begin, when Medicare IRMAA thresholds matter. And all of that changes if one spouse passes and the surviving spouse moves into a single tax bracket. That last point is huge. Many married couples plan around married filing jointly brackets, but eventually one spouse may be a single filer. The income may not drop in half. The portfolio may not drop in half, but the tax bracket and the IRMAA thresholds become tighter. That can create what I call the widow tax challenge. This is why the withdrawal sequence is not just about today's tax bill. It is about the next 10, 20, or 30 years. Sometimes the right move is to pay more taxes intentionally now to avoid much larger forced income later. Sometimes the right move is to preserve flexibility. Sometimes the right move is to keep income below a Medicare threshold. Sometimes the right move is to harvest gains while still staying in favorable brackets. The point is that there is no one perfect order. The point is that order matters. The third lever is about building guardrails. This is where taxes, Medicare, and investment risk come together. A strong retirement income plan should answer: what happens if the markets fall 20% in 1 year? What happens if inflation is higher than expected? What happens if healthcare costs rise? And it will rise. What happens if we need to support an adult child or aging parent? What happens if one spouse passes? What happens if we sell a business, sell a home, or realize a large capital gain? What happens when RMDs begin? What happens when we start Social Security? A good plan does not assume that every year will be perfect, but it has rules for imperfect years. For an example, maybe you keep 1 or 2 years of planned withdrawals in cash or short-term reserves. Maybe you separate essential spending from discretionary spending. Maybe you have a rule that travel spending adjusts if the portfolio falls below a certain level. Maybe you plan Roth conversions in the windows before retirement, but before RMDs. Maybe you coordinate capital gains with Medicare. Maybe you use charitable strategies like QCDs when eligible to manage taxable IRA distributions. Maybe you intentionally delay Social Security to increase guaranteed income later, depending on your health, longevity, and household needs. This is not about avoiding taxes completely. That is not realistic. It is about avoiding accidental taxes. The taxes that happen because the portfolio, the withdrawals, the Roth strategy, the Medicare premiums, and the estate plan were never coordinated. That is the Net-Efficiency Playbook. Map the buckets, design the withdrawal sequence, build income, and market guardrails. So the real question is not, is $5 million enough? The better question is, do you have a coordinated plan for how that $5 million becomes income, how it gets taxed, how it supports your lifestyle, and how it holds up through market volatility, healthcare costs, and major life transitions? decisions. That is the work that I help people through my retirement readiness and work optional planning process. We look at your full picture, your assets, income sources, withdrawal strategy, Social Security, Roth conversion, opportunities, healthcare, lifestyle goals, and risks you may not see yet. Then we turn that into a clear roadmap so you can move forward with more clarity and confidence. So if you're looking at retirement and wondering, do we actually have enough, and how do we turn this into a real plan? You can learn about working with me in the link below. Let us bring this all together. A $5 million portfolio is a major accomplishment, but in 2026, the number by itself does not tell you enough, because 5 million can produce very different retirement outcomes depending on 5 things. First, inflation. A $5 million portfolio today does not have the same purchasing power the way it did many years ago. Second, withdrawal rate. At 3%, 3.5%, 4, or 5, the same portfolio creates very different income levels. Third, account type. A Roth dollar, a taxable brokerage, a pre-tax IRA dollar, and home equity are not the same. Fourth, Medicare and IRMAA. Healthcare premiums are affected by income, and income planning can affect those premiums. And last but not least, sequence risk. The first decade of retirement matters because withdrawals during down markets can permanently damage the trajectory of the portfolio. So the takeaway is not 5 million is fragile. The takeaway is that uncoordinated wealth can be fragile. A $5 million portfolio should give you options, but the way you preserve those options is by turning those portfolio into a tax-aware, income-aware, health-care-aware retirement strategy. Because the goal is not just to retire. The goal is to retire with clarity, confidence, and control over decisions that matter most. If you found this video helpful, make sure to subscribe. And you can check out my next video over here where I talk about retirement readiness at different net worth levels. I'll see you in the next one.